It's now time for our main event with your host, Chris Tetrold Blaine. Welcome to Once Upon a Turnbuckle.
Welcome to another very special episode of Once Upon a Turnbuckle, and I'm thrilled to be able to welcome another special guest and another heavy hitter from the British wrestling scene. Number one, Jonny Rose. How are you today, sir, or tonight?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
No, that's all right. That's all right. I've been looking forward to this one. And I'll kick off by saying, thanks to Cayman for kind of initiating it in a way, because he has mentioned you a couple of times when we've been talking, and I know there's a particular incident that the reason this came to be that you share an experience with. So we'll come to that anyway a bit later.
Yeah, cool.
Fun. But
thanks for having me. He sort of hooked us up, didn't he? So yeah, good on him.
Yeah, he's always good. I mean, I keep dropping his name into quite a few of these, I think, because lately he has been instrumental in quite a few of the guests that I've had on. I'm sort of, I'm not following him around or anything, but he's certainly sort of got connections in a lot of places.
Yeah, he seems to know everybody, doesn't he? He's everyone's friend.
He is, bless him. Yeah. You can't help but like him, can you? Really?
No, he's lovable rogue.
He is. But we're not here to talk about Cayman. We're here to talk about you. So, the way that I like to open these things up for anyone who's seen or listened to one of these before is I'm really interested to know how people got into wrestling, where they're even back to when their interest first started. So going right back to when you first discovered wrestling as a fan, if you were a fan before you got into it, sort of when did that occur? When did you first sort of find out what wrestling was?
I guess I was about 8 years old, 7 or 8. And I used to watch it. I used to stay at my nan and granddad's at the weekend. Right. And, the ITV stuff on a Saturday afternoon was on.
Okay. Well, the sport stuff we're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, it was after, like, World of Sport finished in sort of 85, 86, whatever it was. But it was its standalone ITV wrestling show at that point.
Yeah.
And my granddad saw a poster in the town for, I grew up in Worcester. And he saw a poster in the town. It was live there, and it was April the 11th, 1987. I still got the program to this day.
My third birthday.
Was it?
Yeah.
There we go. And he took me there, and I was just buzzing to see the people that I see on TV, in real life.
Yeah.
But come the second match, I was in tears. I remember the show vividly, like match for match. And the first match was brilliant. It was Kid McCoy against Danny Boy Collins.
Okay.
And it was nice, sort of like lighter weight, sort of rolling around, doing pretty sort of reversals and that. And I thought, oh, this is nice.
Yeah.
And then the second match was big heavyweight, people like proper laying them in. So it seemed. Right. And I cried, and I was like, I don't like this anymore. And my granddad said, like, I've paid the money, you're staying.
Right.
And the next match was Big Daddy. And when I saw Big Daddy come to the ring and all the kids were rushing towards him, and the atmosphere in the building and the cheering and the just being there and being part of that was amazing. And it was seeing Big Daddy come to the ring. It wasn't the wrestling that drew me. It was him and the character that kind of drew me into wrestling. And from that day, I was hooked.
That's quite so for a first experience getting to see Big Daddy. That's quite impressive.
Yeah.
You may as well go in at the top as far as British wrestling goes. If you're gonna.
Yeah, a lot of people knock him for his ability, and what he was like backstage. I don't know. I didn't know the man, but he was the biggest name in all of British wrestling. You can't fault him for that. He put bums on seats, didn't he?
He did. Yeah. So I think you don't even need to be a wrestling fan to know who Big Daddy is.
No, I've said this before to people. He was on the front cover of, TV Times and these magazines and things.
Yeah.
He was on Tiz Was and kids' TV shows and talk shows and This Is Your Life and all that. Everybody knew him regardless. He's the British Hulk Hogan, isn't he?
He is. Yeah. I mean, there's two names that are synonymous really with British wrestling. Again, even if you weren't really into it, and like for years and years. Even now, I think when you talk about British wrestling, obviously moved on a lot since that. But
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, anyone over the age of say maybe 40, it's Big Daddy Giant Haystacks, maybe Kendo Nagasaki, just because he had the mask on. I think
yeah,
he sort of stood out because of that.
Yeah, yeah.
But you know, he's always Big Daddy Giant Haystacks in that order.
Yeah. Yeah, I missed out a little bit on this. When I got into it, obviously I got into the American stuff, late 80s, early 90s. The British wrestling, I don't even know if it was still on ITV back then, but I wasn't really exposed to it until
88 it finished.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. No, it was just before I started getting into it then. So
Right.
it's a shame, really, not to. I mean, I'm appreciating it now, but I can imagine what
YouTube's a beautiful thing.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, let's be honest. I think that's one thing that's really changed the industry. You've got so much, you're able to delve into so much, even the historical stuff now, because
the history is there. There's no reason not to know your history with that kind of, the internet around.
That's it. That's it. So going on from that first show then, is sort of, getting hooked into it. At what point was it that you then decided for yourself? I mean, we all grow up wrestling fans, we all kind of want to get in the ring and think we can do it. At what point was it that you seriously started thinking, I want to do this?
There came I worked at Butlins for a year in 97, and there was wrestling on every Tuesday. And I was always sort of first there. Still, I was 18 years old at that point, but still a massive kid at heart, still such a big wrestling fan. And every week was the same 4 wrestlers, and every week they were doing the same things.
Right.
That guy lost in exactly the same way last week. Why didn't he work that out? Like, why did he do it again? What an idiot. So it was that point there. It was that year. I was 18 years old. A lot of kids, I'm sure, would have clued up far earlier.
Yeah.
But, it was that point there that I knew it was a bit hokey.
Okay.
Otherwise they just, he got backdropped doing exactly the same thing 2 weeks in a row, and then it was 3 weeks in a row. I was there the whole season. So every week was the same 4 people doing the same 4 things.
Is this the danger?
Doing the same thing.
The danger of having it at somewhere like Butlins is that they just rely on the fact they'll probably have a different crowd every week. Yeah, so they can just get away with the same stuff.
Exactly. We did the same sort of thing years later when we did the holiday parks for Haven and stuff. But it was that point that I kind of worked. Nobody told me, but I just kind of worked it out for myself.
Sure.
I'd see them in the bar the night before together, and I thought, well, why are they not sort of punching each other in the head? And then a couple of weeks later, it all sort of
clicked in,
comes to life. But and I thought, I was only a skinny kid, there was nothing to me. So my first kind of introduction into being part of wrestling. I mean, I saw a show. Sorry, I'm probably branching off into a totally different direction.
No, go ahead.
I saw a shoot interview with. I love my shoot interviews. I learn more from shoot interviews now than watching wrestling. Because I love the kind of backstage stories and stuff.
Yeah, they get.
And it's with Bobby Heenan.
Oh yeah, okay.
It was with Bobby Heenan, and he said, the day you get hooked on wrestling is the day you first get involved in wrestling.
Okay.
So
pretty profound, but yeah, I know what he means.
Yeah, because it becomes such a big part of your life, isn't it? It's not just it may well be a hobby, but it's a hobby that every room I go into, I think, can I get a ring in here? It becomes such a big part of life. Or you see some builders with a cage around it, and you just want to run at it. It's just like there's nothing in my life that's not part of wrestling.
Right.
And it's been that way since I was a kid. But the very first job I had in wrestling, I was on my holidays, and even when the wrestling was on at holiday parks and things, let's say it was on at 1 o'clock, I'd eat my breakfast. I'd be there at 9 waiting for them to arrive.
Wow. Okay.
And the van arrived. This Burnham-on-Sea. And the holiday park was called Holly Marine at the time. I think it's like one of those park resorts or something now.
Yeah.
The van arrived, and they all, these 4 fellas, and got out, and They were emptying the van, taking the ring in, and I was just kind of there looking up, and they gave me this rope, like this, one of the ropes round me head, and I carried it in, and I must have been probably 10 or 11 at that point. So using kind of Bobby Heenan's theory, I think that kind of drew me in. Like, I was a fan until then, and then at that point, I'm working on this wrestling show because I'm putting the ring up, right?
Yeah.
I'm taking the ring in. I'm 10 years old. I'm like superstar now.
And that's where they all start as well, really. A lot of them say that, don't they? They start with, if you go the right routes, I feel anyway, you start right at the ground level with things like that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the best, like Bobby Eaton used to put the ring up, and Terry Gordy and Michael Hayes and people like that.
Yeah, they did all right.
So, but my first actual introduction into wrestling itself was through a fella called Mad Eli Collins, who was a crazy wrestling fan from Bath. There was a telephone number, one of these like premium rate telephone numbers called Wrestle Call, and you could ring it and it would tell you where the wrestling shows were in England that week.
Right.
So, it'll be updated on like Monday and Thursday or something, Monday for the midweek and Thursday for the weekend. But I worked out that it cost me 49p a minute to ring that, or I could use the telephone number that was in the program for a fella called Russell Plummer, who wrote the program and did the voice for Wrestle Call.
Okay.
So I just rang the office of Russell Plummer just to save me some money, because I'm not paying 49p a minute, right?
Fair enough.
So I'd ring Russell Plummer and say, "Where's wrestling this weekend?" Or, where's wrestling? I worked in a restaurant at the time, and, I'd be off on Thursday or whatever, and he'd say, "Oh, there's wrestling in Bristol on Thursday." So off I'd go on the train, and wherever it happened to be, I'd travel all over the place just to watch wrestling.
Cool.
And he sent me to Trowbridge. It was one Saturday I was off, and he sent me to Trowbridge. Well, Russell Plummer said there's wrestling in Trowbridge in Wiltshire. And I went there, and it was my first experience of a small show. Like, it seemed more independent with not names that I'd recognised on. All the others were kind of all-star Brian Dixon shows with people that I'd seen on TV, or, American sort of import fellas, or when this was a sort of local kind of no names on in a very small community centre. And I was speaking to Eli, the promoter, Mad Eli, who like I said was a crazy wrestling. But Mad Eli, when wrestling came off TV in 1988, went to the TV offices kind of thing, the studio or whatever it was, and chained himself to the gates outside in protest. That's how, crazy. Like, he said to me, where are you from? And I was like, Worcester. Do you get much wrestling in Worcester? And I was like, well, it used to be every year. Klondike Jake used to bring wrestling there every year with his lookalike fakes, the lookalike Undertaker and all that stuff. But then that sort of died off a little bit. It's 98 at this point. And he said, well, have you ever thought about bringing wrestling to Worcester? I was like, how would I do that? And he said, pay me X amount and I'll bring a show in. And I was robbed. He charged me a fortune for what I got. But I thought, okay. So I found myself a little venue and, paid Eli some money, and he brought a show in. So that my first real sort of introduction into the wrestling world was promoting wrestling.
Okay. That's interesting.
But I'm not putting the show together because Eli did all that. It was terrible, awful show.
Right.
But and it cost me a lot of money as well. But I did 2 of those through Eli because, I really enjoyed the first one, and it wasn't a dead loss. I made a few quid as well. And then we tried another town about 6 or 8 miles away a couple of months later. And then the following year, I'd sort of watched a bit more wrestling and got a few contacts myself through other people. So I kind of put my own thing together then in 99. And that was when I started training with John Brown, who I'd met through Eli on the first show. This is getting very confusing, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
But on the first show that Eli brought in, the referee was a guy named John Brown. So he started training me a little bit. He wrestled as like the ninja or something in a mask because he was knocking on a bit. But so to cover his mask, but he was still really fit. And So it was just to cover his sort of aging looking face.
Right. Okay.
So he started training me, and then sort of by 99, I wasn't ready by any stretch of the imagination, but I thought, well, it's my show, I can do what I want. And I did, and it was I was terrible, but that was my first match, was at that point there in 99. But that was after promoting, and I'd refereed some for a couple of other promoters.
Okay.
Locally, sort of Birmingham direction and Kidderminster, and not far from home. And MC'd a few because I'd always fancied, announcing a little bit.
Yeah.
So
you did a bit.
Yeah, but
you really sort of cut your teeth through everything. I mean, when you were doing all that, like the promoting side, that was there still this burning desire you wanted to be in the ring, or is it just something that came naturally that you just decided?
I don't think it had ever been even a consideration for me. I just wanted to be part of wrestling. I never thought that I could. And probably people watching probably think that I can't, but
you're still around.
Because I was so scared, there was literally nothing to me. I thought if it would have been 10 years before, when there was the weight divisions and the like, I could have been this sort of lightweight guy and got away with it. But by that period, late 90s, we'd been through the big man thing. It wasn't quite we'd seen the Shawn Michaels and the Rey Mysterios and that kind of thing, but I wasn't that by any stretch.
No.
And my wrestling mind kind of changed. I had one direction in my mind, and then I had another. I wanted to be British wrestler man, doing wrestling.
Yeah.
And then a couple of weeks later, I wanted to stick pins in people's heads. And then a few months later, I wanted to be, Tracey Smothers dancing. It would depend. It took me a while to find my niche.
Yeah.
And to find where I was comfortable. Because I didn't think I belonged in wrestling until I felt comfortable.
Yeah.
And it took me probably 10 years or more before I felt comfortable enough to get the confidence to do it.
Yeah. So what is that persona then? What was that that you felt most comfortable with?
A lot of people see me as lazy, but I see myself as using psychology rather than wrestling.
Okay.
Listening to a crowd and working out when's the right time to do something. And if you don't have to do something, I'm not doing it because, why sweat when you don't have to, right?
Yeah.
But I learned I mentioned Tracey Smothers and I spent a lot of time with him on his UK tours.
Okay, cool.
He used to stay at my house and I'd drive him around places, and he helped me too because I'd get a lot of bookings through that. If I was with him, then they'd use me.
Yeah.
But just being around him, you'd soak it up, and he'd watch what you do, and he'd be like, "Well, why did you do that?" Well, I can. Well, yeah, but you don't need to. Yeah, but I can do it though, so why wouldn't I do it? Well, just do that next time, or do it another time.
He's someone that really you would. With me growing up, I knew of him obviously. When he was with WWF and WCW and everything. So I don't think mainstream wise he really got the recognition he deserved. But I guess spending time with him, he's someone you really would just learn from, because he's been.
He would talk wrestling all day long, from the minute he wakes up till the minute he goes to bed. It's a wrestling story or some form of education. And you don't even have to you take it in without even knowing you're taking it in.
Yeah.
And this is like, I don't know what it is, 15 years later, and I'm still thinking, oh yeah, it's something you said there. And you do it without even realizing. But it's through that, and it's other people, like some of the British boys. I wasn't quick when I was young. I wasn't athletic in any way, but I'd move too much, or my feet would be in the wrong place, or something really that you don't even know you're doing wrong, and nobody would know unless you're the trained eye. But to the casual wrestling fan, it just makes you look that little bit stronger. So you'll stand in a certain position, and you'll stand there for 10 seconds instead of the 8 seconds that you did. And you think, what difference is it going to make? And then when you put it into real life, it really does make a difference.
Okay.
You know, it's like I said, a lot of people think, oh, you know, he's just standing there because he can't do anything else. And that might be true. I'm not, like I said, I'm not athletic in any way. And I'd much rather just stand there and have people cheer for me like Big Daddy did that day when I saw him. But it seems to be working.
Yeah.
Whatever. I can't pinpoint what I'm doing exactly, but it's working.
It might. It worked back then. You mentioned Big Daddy. I mean, all those years ago, that's the same kind of thing that he did. So I mean, maybe it's a British wrestling thing. Maybe it's just the charm that we've grown up with. That's in.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think in some small towns around England, wrestling's pretty much a novelty, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, I know there seems to be a promotion in every town, but once you're out of the bigger towns and you're in the smaller ones, it's more of a novelty. It's something you see like twice a year rather than every month. So I like the casual wrestling fan rather than those sort of internet ones that like the flips, because I can't do the flips. I really like what they do.
Yeah,
I really do, and I wish I could, because I'd almost definitely be doing it if I could. But I can't. So I think even on those flippy type shows, I offer something just a little bit different. So on the show, then they've got a buffet rather than a plate of the same thing.
And absolutely, yeah. I mean, I've watched. I don't watch a lot of the televised wrestling. I haven't done for a while, but what I have seen, it's impressive for a couple of minutes. But then, when the entire match or the entire card is made up of the same thing, I would switch off. It's not. I grew up with athletic types. Again, you mentioned Shawn Michaels. He was one of my heroes when I was growing up. They did that kind of thing when it was necessary. It wasn't there wasn't a high spot. Literally lining them up and sort of, as I say, telegraphing them. You could tell where they're coming from. So no, I would probably, I would be one of those fans that want, you have the match which is a real sort of mat match. You have one with the high flyers. You have one with the bigger guys, which is slower. It brings back that old school charm to me.
Yeah, wrestling goes back to the circus, and in the circus they had, a juggler, tightrope walker, trapeze, clown, every form of entertainment. If you don't like the clown, in 3 or 4 minutes he'll be gone and there'll be something else that you might like.
Exactly.
So if it was just an hour and a half of a woman on a trapeze, you'd be like, yeah, I've seen it now. Swing, flippy, flippy, done. You mix it up and it's all right. It's all good. But going back to that high spot, those high spot things have always been a thing, right? But in one of the greatest matches ever is Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat. That hour-long match that they did, I think it was like 89.
Yeah, they're three classics in a row, didn't they, that year?
Yeah, really good. But the hour-long one was basically a headlock.
Yeah.
At the right time, they did something. Then there was like Ricky Steamboat got the headlock back on, and they were in that for 4 minutes. They knew exactly when to go again based on the reaction from the people. When the timing was right, they had a breather, they're ready to go. Away they go again. 30 seconds of something nice, headlock back on again. Right. But nobody called that lazy because it's Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat, so.
No. And when I was growing up, the hour-long matches or the 45-minute matches even, they were a lot to they were a real test for my attention span.
Yeah.
But then you get it done right, and you find actually you can't look away because even at that pace, you may well miss something.
It's edgy of your seat stuff. You think, right, they're in a headlock now, but something's going to happen, and it builds, and it's like it feels like when the headlock is on and they're on the mat, the headlock takeover thing, they're on the mat. It's like going up on the roller coaster.
Yeah. And
when you get to the top, you're going to come down, and the excitement is going to start. But that's the headlock. It's going up and up and up, and when it gets to the top, whoosh, and then they're doing the sleeping and the leaping, and they're away then.
Yeah. I one of my favorite matches ever is the Iron Man match at WrestleMania 12 with Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. And in fact, they went an hour without a decision, without a fall. I thought was brilliant because you built the drama there.
everything in that was perfectly timed,
Yeah.
and it looked so natural and smooth, and
And
just
then
it was a beautiful thing to watch.
a few years later, when you're having, say, Triple H and The Rock in an Iron Man match, and they're like, someone wins 7 falls to 6 or something, there's way too much going on.
Yeah.
Really, for I tune off them for the opposite reason. It's just, what's the point? There's
And
no drama
see,
in
the
this.
seventh, when you say 7 falls to 6, and that's in an hour, when they would wrestle each other in a normal match that would be 25 minutes long, and it'd just be one fall. Where did all the other falls just suddenly appear from?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
there's no psychology or thought through.
No.
I overthink everything though.
I think I'm on the same page. I think it's just what you grow up with, really, and that you appreciate different things. I think the generation growing up now, depending on what your opinion is, they have got a great product to choose from. They got so much to choose from, but it's a different world than what I grew up with, and they'll appreciate different things. They'll probably go back on the network and watch stuff that from the 80s, 90s and find it boring. But
it's a totally different sport, and it's not. I'm not saying it's. I mean, I do say it's better then, but it's only better for me because I watch. That's what I'd like. That's what I grew up on, and that's what I'm accustomed to. I mean, are they better? They're better bodies now. They're better athletes now. That but it's a subjective thing, isn't it? You've got to watch wrestling through subjective eyes because it's the same as anything else. Music is the same. You don't like every band that ever existed.
No.
You're not going to like every wrestling that's ever existed.
No.
No,
everyone's got the style they appreciate. And I don't feel there's enough of the variety. Everyone seems to be the same kind of build ability. They're doing the same kind of things. You may get some differences with some of the smaller guys. They can do a bit more, but I don't know. Yeah. Again, harking back to the circus, I just keep thinking about late 80s WWF when you had Hogan the Warrior, Earthquake, then you had up against the Andre the Giant.
89 is a massive year for me as a fan because it was my first introduction to WrestleMania. I was at school and my friend Mark Watton says to me, "Did you watch WrestleMania?" I didn't have Sky or anything.
No.
We didn't have any money. So he said, "Did you watch WrestleMania?" And I was like, "No, what's WrestleMania?" I didn't have a clue what it was. And he said, "I'll bring you the video." Next morning, there he was with the video.
Right.
And I'd always seen the bits of TV that I'd seen of the American stuff was from late night ITV, sort of stupid o'clock in the morning on like a Tuesday or Wednesday. They'd have like an hour of wrestling on, and I'd tape it before school, that night. And then it's the only day that I'd ever get up early to watch it, early for school, and I'd watch that before I go to school.
Awesome.
So I'd go home and watch this WrestleMania 5. It's the first time I'd seen a whole wrestling show from the same building of American wrestling. Because the Wrestling Challenge or whatever that was shown on ITV was like a match from here and a match from there and a match from here. So it was all in one building. It was more than 45 minutes long, and there was wrestler against wrestler rather than wrestler against some dude that's just there to lose. I don't like the term jobber, but it was competitive. I'd never seen anything like it.
No.
I knew the WWF was a thing, like I said, because the Wrestling Challenge and all that was on. That to me was American wrestling. There was 2 types of wrestling for me as a kid.
Yeah.
There was American wrestling, which was WWF, nothing else, didn't even know anything else existed. No. And British wrestling was what was on TV and that I'd seen, in the halls and stuff.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, I don't know, I've rambled, sorry.
That's right.
And then the late night wrestling thing, I didn't go and buy the newspaper because that cost money, but I'd go into the news agents, look at the TV guide because it changed times every week.
Right.
So I'd be like, right, I'm at 2:40 this week in the morning, go back home, set my video recorder.
Brilliant.
And then one week it said in the newspaper TV listings, NWA wrestling. What's that then? I've no idea what NWA. I thought it was a spelling mistake, right? Because I didn't know what NWA was or anything like that. Yeah. And then that week it was totally different wrestling. And the first NWA match was Arn Anderson and Great Muta, which again changed my life. And now I realise there's more to wrestling than that American and that British. Yeah. It opened up all new doors.
Yeah.
And then they started changing the late night wrestling every couple of weeks. I saw all sorts then.
Right.
There was one called the Global Wrestling Alliance, which was Dean Malenko's dad's promotion,
Oh, okay. Right.
Boris.
Yeah.
It had Norman Smiley and the Malenko brothers and
Yeah.
all sorts on there. There was ICW, which was the Savoldi family from like New Jersey.
Okay.
Kevin Sullivan and the Sheepherders, became the Bushwhackers.
Yeah.
They were on that.
Yeah.
Old reruns from a few years before.
Yeah.
All sort, literally like random, sort of just random wrestling tapes they seem to find in a warehouse that they just thought, oh, we'll throw this on.
Wow.
And I didn't realise wrestling was as big as it was, and just blew my mind. And you just want to know more then. And
Yeah.
and now I've got all these videos
I
everywhere.
was gonna say I've peered over your shoulder and I've recognised, this is how sad I am. I recognised a few of the spines from my day when I had obviously your collection coming out my ears. Have you got a favourite out of that collection?
Yeah, I've got like go-to ones. If I've got like a couple of hours on my hands,
Yeah.
and like just ones that I know I'm going to be happy and I don't have to skip any. One is fan favorites.
Yeah.
That is Brooklyn Brawler and Coco Beware is the first match on it.
Yeah.
And I can't believe any fan would ask to see the Brooklyn Brawler, but
I know.
clearly they did.
Yeah, I remember that video. I got bought that. I was off school sick, but I was out going to the shops with my mum. Can't remember exactly why. She went into a charity shop just down from where we lived, and I picked up like 3 wrestling videos in there, which saw me then. I was brilliant. I just went home, went to bed, and that was one of them. And so, is that the one with Mr. Perfect and Tito Santana on the cover?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, you can't go wrong with them there.
Nah, they're brilliant. Yeah.
I've got another one. The very first wrestling video I ever had was a British one. It's called the Mick McManus World of Wrestling.
Oh,
so
I've seen
that. That's proper. That's always going to be top of my list because it's the very first one I ever had. I came out of school and my granddad picked me up one day and he gave me this video as I got in the car, and I was like, wrestling on a video. How cool is this? And my third one is Ringmaster. It's the Great American Bash from like 1985, and it's edited down into like an hour. It's only sort of highlights of the matches, but it's cool. Pro Wrestling Illustrated brought it out, and Gordon Soley and Bill Apter are hosting it. And it's fabulous. They're my top 3.
Awesome.
But I'd literally watch anything, good or bad, because even bad wrestling is good in my opinion. As long as you put the effort in, there's no such thing as bad wrestling. As long as you put in the effort in.
That's true. It's going to entertain someone, isn't it? That's the thing. If it's not you, so going back just quickly then to your career with wrestling. So, are there any particular matches or moments in that you've been involved in? Anyone that you faced in the ring that really sort of rates high on your top moments as a wrestler yourself?
There's several boxes that I did, like bucket list boxes that I ticked.
Okay.
Wrestling Scrubber Daly was one because he was in the tag match against Big Daddy that first day.
Wow, that's cool.
He was on the opposite side.
Right. Okay.
It was Big Daddy and Andy Blair against Scrubber Daly and Lucky Gordon. And I've wrestled Scrubber twice now. Wow. And I can call him a friend now as well. He's awesome. Someone that I really admire, and he's a great human being. So that was a big tick off the bucket list. I can't do the Big Daddy thing. No. I get that, but that's as close as I'm going to get, and that's good. That's good by me. I could be the Big Daddy that day.
Yeah.
That's the way I saw it.
Yeah.
Danny Boy Collins, I wrestled him in 2009. Probably one of the toughest matches I've ever had as well.
Right.
Proper workhorse. Joey Legend.
Yeah.
Rates really highly for me because the day I wrestled him, I didn't feel well at all. Right. And he still made me look amazing.
That's important, working with the right people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't hard in any way for him, or at least he didn't make it look hard. I'm sure it was, but he didn't make it look hard, and he was great. One of the best matches I've ever seen. It's got him in it. Joe Legend against Mike Sanders,
Okay.
who was in WCW.
Yeah.
But that was from the World Wrestling All Stars on a pay-per-view.
Okay.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. Pay-per-view from Scotland, I think.
Okay.
Really good.
Cool.
Tracey, obviously,
Yeah.
because I'm the biggest sort of Southern wrestling fan.
Okay.
Southern American wrestling fan.
Yeah.
Always been a fan of the sort of Smoky Mountain thing and all that.
Yeah.
So I wrestled and tagged with Tracey. Mad Dog Max, who's I've probably wrestled 200 times in various parts of the country. We went to America as well and tagged over there, and we wrestled each other over there. And he's real high on the list. Like, I can't list everybody because I don't want to. I don't want to leave anyone off.
No. I'm sure they
what
will.
about me? But there's certain people that if I could pick to wrestle every day, they would be on my list because I know I'll be safe and I know we could do it regardless of the style of crowd or the size of the crowd. Just comfortable with people.
With those that you've worked with a lot, do you find you still learn from each other even after all that time, or does it just become sort of automatic?
Yeah, very much so. Like, it's things happen by accident a lot of time. I'm not a big planner. I see people in dressing rooms and they're like, we'll do this and then this and then this. I can't take that in.
No.
I haven't, like, my memory doesn't quite function that way. I wouldn't be able to lay out a 20-minute match.
No.
And I think if you're going out to a crowd and giving them chicken curry and they want fish and chips, then you're knackered, aren't you? You can't offer them something and they're not buying it. So you have to kind of listen and react appropriately. But yeah, some of the best things that we've just done by accident and think, oh yeah, that's a keeper. So every day is a school day. When you stop learning, then there's no point in doing it.
Yeah, I hear that. So is there any? I can see one of the matches you've got coming up is a good old fashioned chain match. So I don't hear of many of them nowadays. I must admit. So it's great to see them still being used. But
I've done a few chain matches, and they're always quite entertaining. It's relatively easy thing to do as well. And again, being a fan of the sort of Southern, it was quite a big thing, the Memphis way, and Smoky Mountain had a few. Excuse me. Tracey Smothers and the Dirty White Boy had a couple of chain matches that were pretty brutal. I don't think this one will be quite that brutal, but
they won the famous, the old school most famous ones I remember is Roddy Piper and Greg Valentine.
Oh yeah, that was savage, wasn't it? It really was quite wild.
Yeah.
Starcade '83, wasn't it?
I couldn't remember the year actually. Yeah, that sounds about right. But
the very first Starcade. The chain match thing, we've worked it because the same place every month, so you have to keep it fresh. It's like obviously you can't do the same thing every time, so it's just a way of offering something different as well. And he beat me last time round with a chain, and yada yada.
Just like fitting.
Just makes sense at this point.
If you
looking forward to it.
Have you got any other sort of wacky matches that you have been involved in? Either gimmick matches or anything where something odd has happened?
I've done cage matches and I'm more of a traditionalist, so I've never been a sort of hardcore kind of, well, we create through the promotion that I've run, going to the same place quite often, you have to think of sort of wacky, wonderful things. We have this guy called the Oscar, right? So he's all decked in sort of gold outfit and he looks like the Oscar, right?
Awesome.
This is going back a few years, but we created, him being from Hollywood or whatever, the Oscars bound to be from Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
We created this match where the loser had to be put in, well, like a casket match style.
Yeah.
We have to be put into the casket, where this you had to be put into a suitcase,
Right.
zipped up, and then walked out the building. So the match ended when you walked out the building.
That's amazing.
Stupid, crazy, wacky, but I found it funny.
That's amazing. It's not something you find on TV. That's what I like
No.
when I go out. If you just see something that's replicated that you've seen 100 times before, it gets a bit naff, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, to anyone that maybe hadn't seen the build up to it, it's probably just stupid. But if you were there the month before or the one before that, it probably would have made sense. So.
Yeah. But even if you're just there for that one night, that's a hell of a memory you'll take away from that. Like,
yeah,
but you'll be
having someone stuffed in a suitcase, wheeled out the building.
if you want to prove to people that wrestling isn't what they have in their mind, then it is.
Yeah, I mean, you're never going to know what people actually have. You can't. If you're not a wrestling fan, you're never gonna. I don't think you'll ever understand. No. And I've had people say to me things like, wrestling is not real, and there's no way you can fight that, because if you tell them that it is real, they'll be like, nah, of course it isn't. But then if you tell them that it isn't real, they'll go, yeah, but it's got to hurt, isn't it? It's like you're never going to win. No, there's always going to be people that are against you.
Yeah. I think it's. I was about 10 years old when I first heard someone say to me, I think it was my dad, it isn't real. And I was watching the Royal Rumble 94 at the time. It's still up here. And I was like on the stuff, oh yeah, of course I know that. And I was just watching it then, and the rest of the show wasn't the same. I was like, really? I was looking for stuff almost, but then obviously over the years, you get wise to. They're a lot more open about it these days, which I think is one reason why the industry has changed so much, and the attitude towards it has changed so much. Is people look at it a lot differently. Where WWE are taking themselves off in the cinematic, or they were last year in the cinematic route, probably a bit too much for my liking. But I guess when people have got that kind of attitude, it's like, well, we know it's not real in a sense. Okay, we'll run with that.
Like, I don't defend that real thing anymore. I used to be very, if it's not real, come and have a go. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
When, I defend wrestling when they say wrestling's a load of shit. Oh, sorry, I don't know if I'm swearing.
No, carry on. Don't worry.
When they say things like that, I kind of defend the honor of wrestling as still being, to me, it's the greatest. It's still a sport to me.
Yeah.
It's still the greatest sport, entertainment, whatever you want to call it. It's still the greatest form of art, whatever you see it as.
Yeah.
It's still the greatest that thing to me, and I'll always defend that. But you can't defend that real thing anymore.
No, I mean, there's too many people within it that have, you pick up any biography now, and as fascinating as they are, they've just blown the lid on that, haven't they, really? And
the only thing you can do is try and make them believe just for that little period that they're there.
Yeah, definitely. It works.
I don't like it. I don't like it when they go too phony.
No,
it's still got to be believable.
Yeah. I think that's why when I was growing up, because I've been exposed really to the. This is going back to what you were saying earlier: two styles, American and British wrestling.
Yeah.
I felt really uncomfortable with the British wrestling. Steven Regal went over to WCW, and apart from his character being one that I really didn't like, his style just I was uncomfortable watching it because it was so different. But looking back on it now, it's like, well, he was actually probably the purest wrestler that was.
He's just being a wrestler.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just not what at that point. It's not what you saw most of. It's
it was. I sometimes don't even blame it's not the fans watching's fault. It's the people that are putting the product out there. Because it's them that train the watchers, isn't it? It's them that train the viewers.
Yeah.
You just need to. I think that they're used to seeing a dance now, and they've become adept to that. They're used to that sort of
it's impressive.
ballet-like thing.
I won't take away
Yeah,
from
oh
what
yeah,
these
totally
guys can
agree.
do. It's
Really
brilliant.
is impressive. I watched something, I think it was like a AEW clip or something, and it was a great little sort of well put together thing, and it was maybe 4 or 5 minutes long, but there was like somebody rolled under something and then they leapfrog somewhere and flip over something. No one's actually touching anybody.
No, that's it. No.
And the whole idea of the game is to touch somebody to get them on the floor, surely, you know, unless I've got that wrong.
I don't know.
But, you know, as far as I was aware, the whole idea was to pin someone.
Yeah.
And you can't do that unless you touch them. So I watched like 4 minutes of them not touching each other, but rolling around each other. And I thought, that'll do it for me.
Yeah, exactly. I was the same. There's one British guy, again, I've mentioned him a lot on this show to people I've spoken to. The one British guy I really am impressed with over the last few years is the villain, Marty Skrull. I got his DVD for Christmas and I was sat here, and there was a few matches on there with Will Ospreay. Individually, absolutely brilliant. Their matches were very entertaining, but the first 4 or 5 minutes of it was just them kind of crisscrossing, listening each other. It's like, you know.
Yeah, and that way they run and then they just step to one side and go, whoop.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't understand. I don't get it. But they're very successful, so I can't knock them for it.
Absolutely.
That's the vast difference between my old school wrestling mind and their very clearly successful. That maybe that's where I went wrong. I just didn't quite get it.
Well, this is
good on them.
This is going to be one of the questions I was going to ask, actually. So, in particular, you obviously discovered wrestling through the British wrestling at the time, and that's what you were, first exposed to. Being involved in it yourself as well through the routes that you have over the years, what's the main difference that you noticed within the British wrestling industry, sort of from then to now?
Rules will be the first thing that comes to my mind, because with rules, wrestling's really easy because you can break them.
Yeah.
So you can have villains, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think now it's very hard to work out who's the goodies and who the baddies are.
Sure.
Whereas years ago, you turn your back to the referee and you punch someone in the head, you're a massive villain automatically.
Yeah.
Split a finger, is illegal.
Right.
You cheated. People knew the rules because they were enforced.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that springs to mind, because rules just made wrestling so much easier.
Yeah.
When now, if you're a villain, you have to pretty much saw someone's head off with a chainsaw before you get taken seriously, like as a badass. You know what I mean?
Probably half the crowd thinks it's amazing.
Yeah.
So they'll be cheering.
Yeah, you'll probably get like shouting the letters of the promotion out.
Yeah.
But the speed of wrestling. I mean, there's always been the quick ones, but the speed of wrestling is everything's like, like fast as lightning.
Yeah.
But if I could make rules a thing everywhere I go, then it'll be amazing. It'll make my life a lot easier.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
As a babyface, you just sell, and as a villain, you just do that bad thing, a couple of times, and people know.
Is that the reason you think then, as villains, you've got to have some kind of over the top gimmick to outwardly be recognised as a villain straight off?
I think if you've got to be loud, and brash, and again, it depends on the crowd, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But most places I go are that casual sort of family wrestling crowd. So it's very traditional in those places.
Yeah.
I don't go all over the shop anymore. I run a pub, and I've got real life in the way.
Yeah.
And
happens eventually, doesn't it?
I didn't think there'll be life after wrestling, because it was. I thought I need to do this every day like I used to, and now I'm quite happy just doing the odd one every other weekend or whatever.
It's not so much life after wrestling. It's just like you've kind of just steered wrestling around what life's become. It's always going to be
like, because I always thought, you're a part-timer now. You're going down the pecking order, but it's who cares? Just you do what you enjoy.
That's it.
And October this month I'd have done maybe 6, which is, more than normal, to be fair. But I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, well, why not? You get some guys like, I don't know, don't watch it, but Roman Reigns, what, he'd pop up once a week, does like 4 shows a month.
Yeah,
I know it's more than that because he's doing more than that in between. But
I'd be very happy with the bank account. But
quite, yeah, wouldn't we all? Anyway, before sort of we're getting into sort of the tail end of this now. I'll have to start winding it up in a bit. So I will need to sort of wind it back to the to the man who helped sort of put this together. So let's bring Cayman into the mix. Your sort of how, when, why did you start working together, and then there's a particular memory involving a pink Vauxhall Nova that I want to touch on.
I think I first met Cayman. I went to an NWA Hammerlock show in Cardiff somewhere with someone that would become a promoter in Wales. He was just kind of looking for wrestlers. So went there because it was local, and see what it was about. And it was him that I saw, and I thought, he's got star potential, this man. He's tall and he's stocky and long hair, and he just looked like a kind of like a half bearded Kerry Von Erich Welsh type.
Okay.
He's kind of, it was like, you couldn't quite describe it, but he just had that star power to him.
Okay, yeah.
And he was green as grass, don't get me wrong, but he had that sort of draw, something drew me to him.
Yeah.
And I pointed him in the direction of this other fellow, and then Celtic wrestling started, and I was quite a big part of that for a long while. And anywhere in South Wales that you went, Cayman was there.
Yeah.
And at one point there was like 4 or 5 promotions in South Wales. So most weekends I was down there doing something.
Right.
And he's been a keeper. Must be 15, 16 years or more.
Wow. Yeah.
And he comes out, he retires, and then 3 years later comes back for one, and then retires again, and you'd see him for 1 or 2. But he seems to be back now for kind of long term. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what he says. Well, I mean, he's got that belt, and so there's going to be a lot. I've been talking to a lot of the Carnage guys recently, sort of getting to know them. So I can imagine he's got a big target on him. So he's got his work.
He's a good one.
Yeah, but
he's a very genuine man. You know where you stand with Cayman. And he's always happy. He lights up a room with his smile. Yeah,
I can get that. I'm a big fan of his podcast. That's kind of how I came to know him, really. And you just it's infectious, isn't it, when you watch him? But we won't gush too much. I don't want to inflate his head too much. So, but yeah, just one funny story he shared when I had him on my show was to do with he was wearing pink. Was there a crowd chant that went up? Who's the wussy in the pink, pink, pink?
There was, yeah. He was like, once a year, my promotion go to a club called Haverley Club in Kidderminster, and they specifically ask now for Cayman because he's the wussy in the pink, pink, pink. So they don't know him by name, but they know he's the wussy in the pink, pink, pink.
Love it.
So he's quite a well-known figure in the Haverley small council estate in Kidderminster area.
And does he wear pink for the occasion?
He does, yeah. It's terms and conditions. It's in the contract.
Love it. Love it. That's brilliant. No, I was I was quite looking forward to seeing pictures of him at the Carnage show when he won the belt with the pink, but he did say it clashed with the strap. There you go. So he went into that show thinking he had sights on that belt anyway. So
yeah, he must have known.
Yeah, well, who knows? But anyway, so before I let you go, just fire a few kind of almost like quick fire questions that I've kind of built up that I like pelting at people. So I guess we've discussed sort of you grew up the old, what I call old school, same kind of era that I kind of grew up with and appreciate. Is there, you mentioned the event that you first sort of discovered WWF, obviously WrestleMania 5 and that. Is there one event or one match from that kind of era that you that is right up there on the top of your list as a fan that you would always want to watch?
Yeah, and when I say, well, one of the names in it will probably make you go, "Ugh," but the other one is probably top of most people's list. But that late night WWF TV show that I used to record, someone gave me, a fella called David Icke, who lives in Stourbridge. He gave me a couple of boxes of old videotapes, and he used to record them at night as well. But he kept his, and I didn't. I just kept recording over the top of them. So now I've got over that side of the room. There we go. Oh, is it? Somewhere over there.
Wow.
Yeah, a load of other tapes that have those original sort of 1988, 89 WWF TV shows. And I remember vividly from a lot of the matches I just kind of wiped from your memory as a kid, but watching them back as an adult now, you know, as someone that's a bit more clued up on wrestling, there's a match from the Boston Garden, and it was early 89. Kurt Hennig, and he was still Mr. Perfect, but he wasn't just Mr. Perfect. He was still Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig.
Okay, yeah.
Still in the trunks rather than the singlet outfit, you know.
Yeah.
Versus Tim Horner.
Okay.
Who was, you know, a regular on TV in NWA and WCW and Smoky Mountain and pretty much every promotion that ever existed. It's perfectly timed. It's smooth as silk. It's early on the card kind of match.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I never went into wrestling to be a superstar because I grew up on watching wrestling in little halls and theatres and holiday parks, you know. So that match there, Tim Horner and Kurt Hennig, could fit into any leisure centre in England as I grew up as a kid. Do you know what I mean? It was just, it's
really interesting.
Tim Horner's not going to be on many people's greatest match of all time. I'm not saying it's the greatest match of all time, but it's one that really springs to mind from that period.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. I might sort of see. I don't know if that's one that's
I'll send it. It's on the YouTube.
Oh,
beautiful
brilliant.
thing.
Yeah, awesome. I'd love to see that. I was the first video I ever had wrestling video was Survivor Series 88.
Right.
Always stuck with me. That's one of my favorites even today. And yeah, Kurt Hennig was on there then. It's probably the same kind of period before he got the singlet and that. And I remember because I'd seen pictures of him before as Mr. Perfect before I actually watched anything properly, and it spun me out that is that him? You know, he just looked really. I mean, looked green as anything, didn't he? But he wasn't at all. That's
like seeing him in the AWA just before he left to go to the WWF matches with Nick Bockwinkel and just so good.
That's one promotion I still haven't delved into much. I tried when I last had the network. I don't subscribe to it these days. But there's so much that you can go back. It's like, you know, an entire promotion's history worth. And I would love to.
I mean, it dates back to like the 50s or whatever. And a lot of people say that it was on its deathbed, and it was 87, 88 onwards. But I think that's only people only see that old, newer AWA, if you will, as bad because it was so good in the peak.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you just got this 1988 AWA without the history, then it would still be perfectly acceptable.
Yeah.
No, I'd quite happily. We're going on holiday, and I've downloaded some 1990 AWA to watch during its dying days to watch on the plane.
I love it. Oh yeah, got to go prepared. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, well done. So one of my other favorite questions then to ask is if you could. It doesn't have to be. I always used to say, put yourself in a match at WrestleMania, past, present, whatever, against whoever. Doesn't have to be WrestleMania. Just if you could have a match with anyone, sort of past or present, that you would class as your sort of crowning moment, who would that be against?
Again, I like to keep the bar low. I always there's two people I wanted to wrestle that I never had a chance to. Drew McDonald passed away, but I always really got along with Drew McDonald, big Scottish dude. You know, quite a big ITV name. He was always on the sort of either tagging or on the opposite side to the Daddy team.
Right. Yeah.
And just legendary across Europe. And Rob Brookside,
Oh, okay.
who now I think lives in Florida or whatever. So
Yeah, is he
I
over
think
at
I've lost the
NXT?
opportunity there for both.
Yeah, well, get yourself over to NXT. I think he's still there, isn't he? Is he
Yeah,
still
I'll give him a ring so I can
yeah,
get
go
sorted.
on. Never too late. Never too late. Awesome. Oh, that's interesting choices. No, I like that. I like that. And
Yeah, but both for different reasons. I mean, Drew McDonald was 100% psychology.
Mm.
You know, a real big, nasty ass Scottish villain, and Rob Brookside for his wrestling.
Okay.
You know, so two totally different reasons, but
would be a belter.
And I watched them against each other many times live, and it's just amazing.
Well, make it triple threat. That would be ideal. So.
I'll piggy in the middle kind of arrangement.
So the final question then is, I know every wrestling fan's probably got theirs, but even if they don't know it, your Mount Rushmore of wrestling, who would you put up there?
Oh, all right, okay. Tommy Rich.
Okay, yeah.
Possibly the greatest promo of all time. I love his voice.
Yeah, I haven't really.
I'd rather listen to him than watch him, to be fair.
Okay.
So good.
Never watched a lot of them, to be fair.
Oh, he's just he's wildfire, Tommy Rich, and you could feel the fire when he speaks. You know what I mean? You believe what he says.
Yeah.
Dusty.
Yeah. Okay.
Buddy Landau.
This is because I like this.
If I could pick one nature boy, it wouldn't be Flair, it would be Buddy Landau every day. 100% more entertaining than Flair.
I missed because my first exposure to Buddy Landau was when he graced the WWF in late '95, early '96. And he was basically used as a jobber, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
He
wrestled Shawn Michaels in Smoky Mountain.
Okay.
When Shawn Michaels was the Intercontinental Champion, right?
Right.
They brought him into Smoky Mountain, and the promo to get him to the show was as real as any promo you could ever watch.
Oh wow! Okay.
You know what I mean? It was to turn this big villain in the area into the baby face to go against the villain Shawn Michaels, and it was so good and so passionate, and you just believed it. Wow. I mean, so far I've not actually picked anyone that is an amazing wrestler. It's all up here rather than your body for me.
I'm with you there. I'm all for that.
They're all great. Don't get me wrong. They're all great in the ring, but Tommy Rich, Buddy Landau. The other one that I forgot that I said. Dusty, yeah. Dusty speaks for itself, doesn't it? And they're all Southern boys as well, aren't they?
Yeah, it's interesting where the influences come from. This is what I really
And I think the other one, for a totally different reason, and that's for more of a sort of the brutality and the realism of wrestling, will be Fit Finlay.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, who you speak to any sort of old time British wrestler from the same period as him, and you ask them who you think the best is, and it's either Dynamite Kid or Finlay every time.
Cool.
And Dynamite Kid's great, but I can't mimic that.
No.
You know, I can't do that, but I can be that sort of brutal dude like Finlay was.
Okay.
Not. I mean, if I can get 5% as brutal as he was, that'll be quite good for me. Yeah. But you know what I'm saying?
I know what you mean.
Yeah, like so good.
Yeah.
And part of that Mick McManus World Wrestling video, he's on the first match.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, he's always logged in my head as one of the best. Very strange. You'll never get that list of wrestlers anywhere from anyone else.
No, I love it. Thank you. That's brilliant. Yeah.
I'm very niche.
Oh, that's good, because it makes it. I really am. Yeah, when I started this off, I was really this show off. I was sharing my take on wrestling when I was growing up, my favorite moments, my favorite stars, and that everyone's got their own take on it, depending
Yeah.
where you grew up, when you grew up, where what the circumstances were that you discovered it. So, that is prime example. So
Yeah.
Awesome.
And yeah, it's a very different world, isn't it? And no one's is gonna no one wrestler has gone into wrestling the same way as the other, I think.
No, definitely not. Might have followed the same sort of blueprint, but different
Yeah.
paths,
Different routes, different people.
Yeah. Listen, Jonny, this has been fantastic, mate. Thank you so much for your time and
I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, before you go, so plug anything. Let people know where they can find you to keep up with what you're doing, where you're appearing, shows you got coming up. Floor's yours.
Jonny Rose on Facebook. That's about the only form of social media that I do, because I'm a bit of an internet idiot. Facebook page HCW International Wrestling. The Railway / Platform 1 is our pub where the wrestling is, and it's Oakham's premier music venue. So if you're a music fan, get yourself to the Railway. Yeah, Facebook's about all I do. I don't understand all the missus does the other things, but she keeps on about Twitter and Insta something.
Yeah,
Instamatic camera. I don't understand. I don't get it. I'll write a letter. I'll write you a letter.
There you go. Ideal. No, I don't do Twitter much. I'm on it, but I don't really know how to use it effectively.
I tried. I just didn't understand it.
That's fine. Listen, thank you so much. I feel like I could definitely talk to you again, and go down these rabbit holes. This has been a great trip down memory lane. I haven't done this for
I don't know as I've answered any question you've given me, but
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I could no, thank you. It's been great to get inside your head, as a fan as well as a wrestler, promoter, everything that you've done. So no
thank you. It's been fun.
No worries. I'll speak to you again. Take care, mate.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, share, and hit the subscribe button. Also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Once Upon a Turnbuckle to keep updated about all future shows.